can y'all hear me? I'm hoping. I always have mic problems, so I'm hoping that it's working. I've been having less mic problems lately, but sometimes it doesn't work, so I want to make sure that I'm not just speaking into the air. Assuming y'all can hear me because it lags behind. Someone, I'm not gonna say who because I don't. This random commenter, I don't want to get people on their back, but okay, cool, you can hear me. But someone sent me this video basically as an argument, and I have not watched the whole thing yet. I've watched this one section of it, but I had so much commentary for my boyfriend while watching it. He's here also. I don't know if you say hi again.
Hello.
Okay, yeah. He's here. So I am giving Casper, it doesn't matter if you skip the ads or not. I get ad revenue for the ads being played. Yeah, so I'm just going to respond to it. I've seen the part that I'm going over now, but I haven't seen the whole thing. I may skip through it because it's like 2 hours long. Cloudy Sheep says hello.
Hello.
To you specifically.
Hello to you specifically, Cloudy Sheep.
But I don't know, I had so much commentary to give about this that I figured I'd stream it, especially since someone specifically asked me to watch it, and I'm like, this is bad.
And he sent the video for me to watch too, so I'm gonna watch it later and possibly take notes.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm just gonna start it. I'm hoping it doesn't echo. I tried to move my mic away because it's really annoying to mute and unmute it, so we're gonna see. It doesn't matter if you skip the ads or not. It doesn't do anything.
Material, which is kind of like in line with conscious material, which is kind
of... Oh, wait, real quick. This is just an ad and then an intro, so we're just starting here.
Like in line with consciousness. And then we have moral material, right? And
by the way, that's a very, like, I know you're also like intentionally oversimplifying it, because if you dig into any of those steps, it gets even more complex. Like at the matter stage, I mean, there's all sorts of studies that have shown, like, well, if the force of gravity was just changed by just a tiny bit amount, then all the material of the universe would have never even coalesced into galaxies and solar systems and planets.
It shouldn't be. And the fact that we have order, and we have order in everything.
I'm gonna let them finish, but I have shit to say about
really
this.
Struggled.
Okay, so 2 things. We're gonna move on to Darwin in a second because she keeps talking about Darwin. But the fine-tuning argument, they're using the fine-tuning argument, which, if you don't know what that is an argument. It's an apologetics argument for Christianity specifically. That because it's generally an argument for God, but people use it as an argument for Christianity, which is a host of other issues. But it's the argument that since we are here and we would not be here if the laws of physics or the planet or whatever, basically
were just slightly different.
Yeah, if the conditions of the universe or whatever were just slightly different, we would not be here.
So because mathematical probability is low, God did it.
Yeah, but there's also the fact that we don't even know if mathematical probability is low because we have a sample size of 1. So first of all, there could be life elsewhere in completely different conditions than Earth. We don't know that. There is no way to know that for sure ever.
There is super Earths that we've identified.
Yeah. There's also
there's a chance that there are super Earths that are decently similar to Earth's atmosphere. We can't confirm whether there's life or not on them because they're very fucking far away. But if there are planets out there that we've identified that are similar to our own conditions, there's gotta be a chance.
Yeah, and also the fact that if we weren't here to observe it, obviously
we wouldn't be here to observe it.
Yeah, and the fact that we haven't always been here and we won't always be here, and also the fact that it's not fine-tuned. The vast majority of our planet is inhospitable to us, being mostly ocean. We can't go into space.
Extinction events.
Yeah, numerous extinction events. Most of the vast majority of the universe, which is insurmountably larger than the small portion of our planet that we can live on, is not hospitable to us. It is not fine-tuned. Most of it is not habitable to us. If it was fine-tuned, why would most of it be inhabitable to us? And also, again, we won't always be here, whether or not that is because we make ourselves go extinct, or
that the Earth was actually made slightly less hospitable to us as a punishment for the original sin.
Oh my god. Anyway, the fine-tuning argument has a lot of flaws. It is not, and also it's very anthropocentric. It's very much we'll focused on us, and it's well, what about all the other species that are here?
All the other species that existed before us, the Cambrian explosion, the dinosaurs, all the other eras that I don't know that much about.
I mean, also the Earth hasn't always been hospitable to us. Once plant life became prominent, I can't remember what the period is called.
Did
but
have an ancestor that is extinct that is over 300 million years old, and I
not.
cannot pronounce its name for the life of me.
That's sad. But like the Earth didn't used to have oxygen as a primary part of its atmosphere. That's the result of plants coming into existence. Earth hasn't even always been hospitable to animals.
And like there's evidence of this. Too.
Yeah, like
actual observable evidence as opposed to, well, things are really nice for me in particular, so this has to be by design.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna continue the video, but anyway, they keep going back to the fine-tuning argument, and it is a horrible argument.
Where he struggled with, everybody has to come up against this at some point. There's a struggle in believing that everything was an accident.
What?
Fine-tuning argument is white privilege, the argument.
Yeah, it is. It literally is.
Moving on.
And even Darwin himself said at one point, and I think it was toward the end, where this is where he came up against it, the order was too much for him. It was too much for him to completely submit even to his
Darwin is not the only evolutionary biologist ever, and we have progressed leaps and bounds since Darwin's time. Just same way that Aristotle is not the only philosopher ever, and Freud is not the only psychologist ever, and Einstein is not the only physicist ever. Like, Darwin is not the arbiter of all things evolution. Darwin didn't even come up with the concept of evolution. Evolution was a concept that was well accepted before Darwin. He came up with the concept of natural selection. Like...
his own theory. To suppose that the eye, with all of its inimitable...
she's using the I quote. This is out of context. I'm going to pull up this fucking quote. Darwin I quote. Creationists love to use the Darwin I quote. Here. To suppose that the eye, with all of its inimitable... contrivances for adjusting to the focus of different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical... Oh, yeah, here. Okay, wait. No, that's not the whole thing, because they cut it off at must be absurd in the highest degree. Yeah. Seems, I confess, absurd in the highest degree. That's where creationists usually cut it off. The difficulty of believing that a perfect and complex eye could be formed by natural selection, though insuperable by our imagination, should not be considered subversive of the theory. They cut it off at that it's absurd. And then he goes on to say that it's actually not evidence against evolution. It just is like, yeah, I understand how you could find that a little absurd, but it's not. But I guarantee you she's going to cut it off at absurd to the highest degree. She's going to cut it off there.
Contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, sorry guys, old language, could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree.
Yep, there she cuts it off there. She doesn't give the whole quote because he goes on to say it's not absurd though.
Be able to explain it by accident. It's you would have to have so many
out of context. That's the worst. Like
the very
I hate
little
when they do that.
Let alone, the human eye that can adjust and focus and do all of this. And even not the human eye, any eye, obviously.
Well, it's important to understand that one of the ways that this has always been addressed has been
greater explanation of the eye argument.
Okay, so. The full quote is Darwin basically saying, I understand how it seems absurd that something as complex as an eye could arise via natural selection. However, it should not be used to discount the theory. And creationists cut it off at, I understand it's absurd. So there is no argument from Darwin. He's just basically saying, I understand why people would find this hard to believe, but here's why it's not.
Okay, so here, what's the quote when it's cut off by...
The quote that they cut it off from, this is what they read, is to suppose that the eye, with all of its inimitable contrivances for adjusting to the focus of different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could be formed by natural selection, seems, I confess, absurd in the highest degree. And that's where they cut it off. But he goes on to say, the difficulty of believing that a perfect and complex eye could be formed by natural selection, though insuperable by our imagination, should not be considered subversive of the theory.
We know the conditions that create eyes. Like, we literally know the specific conditions. Fish in deep underwater cave systems where there is no light don't have eyes. Eyes are start with light detection.
I mean, there's also still animals with eye spots. Like, that's a thing.
Yeah,
that can just detect light or dark.
But eyes start with light detection. That is the very basis of why we get eyes, to detect light. And then we move on to more complex things like recognizing colors which identify poisonous traits or threatening animals. Yeah, I mean... we know why we have eyes. We know
Yeah, I
why
mean,
it
Darwin
was
is
a
also
little
not
upset.
arguing that it's not natural selection. Like, he's saying it is
Yeah,
natural selection,
he's
but they
saying
cut it
it's-
off.
Yeah, so
like,
they, cut
they take it out of
off going,
context.
like, they cut it off going like, yeah, it's really
Even
having
Darwin thinks it's
Darwin
absurd.
goes, it's absurd that eyes came from natural selection.
Yeah, that's such a common creationist argument, and I hate it so much because it's literally just like this. It's cutting it off mid-sentence. Like,
Hold on. Oh my god, it's the guy that makes those vids where he drinks liberal tears.
is it? I don't know. Someone just sent me this video, but probably he's wearing an America shirt.
and time, right? Well, yeah, it happened over billions of
wearing a
years. You have these
non-standard,
things that take place. And after all, look at how quick society has
military
advanced
shirt.
within a relatively short period of time with the right
That's not
conditions.
standard.
It's like, okay, yeah, but that was
He
purposeful
wants it to
forces
look like
actually
this.
utilizing intelligence and the scientific method in order to achieve things. That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about something that just essentially purposelessly, which is to say that there wasn't some sort of creator dictating it. It was just response to stimuli over time, and it came to these conclusions. I want to read this out because this is interesting.
Why is
It
that
goes,
wrong though? Like,
Oxford
he's
University
just
professor-
saying that, like, oh yeah, this is obviously absurd, and I'm not gonna explain why. Why is that absurd?
Wait, sorry, what argument are they on this time?
He's just basically going on to say that it's like absurd that it would happen over millions of years without explaining why. He's just saying it like, yeah, this is crazy, isn't it? And then not saying why.
Oh, so they're just continuing on the Darwin quote.
Well, he's
they're misquoting.
expanding upon it, basically going like,
But he's expanding upon an inherently false claim
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they're cutting off the statement.
yeah, could you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Could you grab a charger? Because I'm using my charger for my mic, and I'll give it back to you after.
Sure. Give me a
Okay.
second.
Thank you. Sorry. I hear that argument all the time. The universe is so perfectly made to survive, therefore it can't just be coincidence. Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's very much an assumption. I don't understand, like, why, like, just because you personally can't comprehend something does not mean that it's God of the gaps. Like, fundamentally what the fine-tuning argument is God of the gaps. Like, a lot of Christian apologetics does boil down to God of the gaps, not all of it. Like, I wouldn't say, what is the one that's the, everything has a beginning, therefore the universe had to have a beginning. Like, what the fuck is that argument? There's a name for it. The one that's like the 4 different premises or 5 different premises and culminates in therefore there must be a God to create it. And it's like not, I wouldn't say that that's a God of the gaps argument. It's just a bad argument. Thank you.
You just needed a chord, right?
Yeah. But, like, I do feel like most Christian apologetics, including the fine-tuning argument, really just boils down to God of the gaps. Like, I don't understand it, therefore God did it.
Professor of Mathematics John Lennox quotes
I love having
renowned
God
Oxford
of the
University
gaps.
mathematical physicist Roger Penrose, and this was kind of the discussion on what is the probability. Because again,
I love Roger Penrose.
we're-
Just gotta point that out.
Yeah, we're
Talking about the probability of life happening is a conversation that we should not be having because we have a sample size of 1. So anyone who immediately talks about the probability of life having in anything other than a theoretical concept, I immediately dismiss. We do not
I mean,
have...
I would consider like the different extinction eras as their own isolated events, sort of. But like,
I mean, but like
Not-
abiogenesis,
okay.
like life arising in general.
Well, yeah. In terms of Genesis, no. But like, I don't know. It's
Like-
obviously like we've had Genesis once, but
Abiogenesis.
biogenesis, yeah. No.
Abiogenesis.
Abiogenesis. Gotcha.
Sorry, I'm being annoying.
Fucking okay. But anyway, so obviously we've had that once. Also, testosterone. We've had that once. We shouldn't assume that we couldn't get it again if we were to have total life extinction. But we've also had all these different eras of evolution,
Yeah.
and each time the apex predators, the keystone predators, kind of all have their own individual looks suited to the climate. So why are we assuming that we couldn't, like, why other life couldn't adapt to other living conditions?
Yeah, exactly.
Like-
I mean, we've actually I don't remember what this experiment is called, but there's actually been an experiment that recreates the basically
Also,
environment
wasn't the world
of
distinctly different.
yeah,
than-
it recreates the environment of the ocean during the time whenever we believe life to have arisen. And actually, although it wasn't able to create life, was able to create all of the building blocks, the proteins, the acids, whatever, that amino acids that are understood to have created the first life, and we don't know what sparked those proteins and amino acids and stuff turning into life, and obviously as such we've not been able to recreate that, but we have been able to recreate the exact environment, and that environment does create the building blocks for life. And Earth really isn't that uncommon in, like, obviously it's uncommon in terms of like the amount of planets, but the fact that there is that amount of planets, like, we do not have a sample size big enough to talk about the statistical likelihood of life happening. So I just immediately don't care when people say like, well, it's statistically unlikely for life to form.
I would still say that, like, you can say statistically it's low likelihood for life to form just because of how many empty planets we found.
But we also don't know that
But,
they're
like,
fully empty, because we don't know if there's microbial
True.
life. Like,
True. Yeah, like, we can't say definitively for shit. Like, I mean, there's ice on Mars.
yeah, like, for all we
And
know,
water
like,
is, like, one of the biggest signs of life.
I'm trying to look at, what is the planet that, here, I'm gonna look up Jupiter, moon, life. I don't remember what planet this is, or not, Europa, it's Europa. Okay, I kept thinking it was Titan, but I know it's not Titan. So we actually think that there's, like, a possibility that there could be
Yeah,
microbial
I've
life
seen
on
that,
Europa.
Casper. It is a fucked up doctrine.
Yeah, I mean, that's a part of the Bible. There's also a thing about having to pay silver
dubstep.
for it.
Dubstep.
Was that a Pornhub link? Probably.
What assumptions are you talking about? From our end or from the other end? Am I audible?
I don't know if you're audible or not. I don't know. I just, like, I don't feel like we can say how statistically likely it is, though, because really we don't know. Like, and even within the planets that we have observed in the, like, star systems that we've observed, there's infinitely larger amounts that we will never observe, that we will never be able to see, that we will never be able to study. Like, okay, you are audible. Like, I don't think that it's possible for us to ever just be in, like, because we will never be able to study every planet. I don't think it's possible for us to say the statistical likelihood of life, even if we do find other life and the sample size extends beyond one. So I just, like, I can't entertain that concept.
Taking God out of the equation. So what does it mean if we take God out of the equation and now we have to explain something without God? And Roger Penrose says,
It means that we have to come up with a real fucking answer
of the entire universe. Each point in this phase space represents a different possible way that the universe might have started off. We are to picture the creator armed with a pen that would be placed at some point in phase space.
Sorry.
Each different position of the
If you're
pen provides a
telling me
different
we are
universe.
to
Now,
picture the creator, your argument fell apart.
Yeah, exactly. It's a presupposition. Like,
the accuracy that is needed for the creator's aim depends on the entropy of the universe that is thereby created. It would be relatively easy to produce a high entropy universe, since then there would be a large volume of the phase space
do these people know what entropy means?
available for the pen to hit. But in order to start off the universe in a state of low entropy, so that there will indeed be a second law of thermodynamics, right, which governs physics, the creator must
I don't
aim for a
think
much
he knows what
tinier
entropy
volume
is.
of
I
the
think the
phase
person
space.
writing this
How tiny
does.
would this region be in order that a universe closely resembling the one in which we actually
wanna
live
hear
would
them
be the result?
discuss
What he's essentially saying is that, again, if you look at the opening, picoseconds of the creation of the universe and whatnot, the degree of probability that it would produce one that would have
We
life,
don't
complex
know
life,
what that
is
probability
incredibly small.
is.
Linux goes on to cite Penrose's answer.
It could very well be possible that the universe would not be able to exist, that it would collapse or fall apart or something without the laws of physics that we have. Like, we do not know what would happen if the universe was created with laws of physics, or if different laws of physics, or if the universe would even be able to exist and sustain itself with different laws of
Do you
physics.
remember- This is such a sidetrack, but do you remember my reverse gravity theory and how you and Paperclip worked on that?
I remember it vaguely because we kept rambling
Mine
about
was
it.
nonsense, but you guys were like, we actually understand physics. Let's figure out how this would actually work.
I vaguely remember that conversation, but I don't remember any of the details. But I do remember that, yeah. I mean, like, I just feel like talking about the statistical likelihood of anything on this grand of a scale is just meaningless. Like, we literally do not know, and there's a very good chance that we will never know. Like, unless we literally find parallel universes that we can observe and measure that do have different laws of physics, which we are not even in the realm of being anywhere near or having any reason to believe that exists, like, then there's no way that we could say anything about the statistics of the laws of physics being the way that they are. Like, again, it's very possible that the universe could not exist.
Dubstep said, wait, but then, like, if you just assume God made everything, then who made God? Was it God squared?
Yeah, okay, so it's funny because they always say things have to have a beginning, therefore there had to
God
be...
does not have a beginning.
Yeah, so why is
Then
God exempt from that?
is-
Like, why can't the universe be exempt from that? We actually don't know that the universe had a beginning. The only thing about the CMB and the Big Bang that, like, that's just where our laws of physics breaks down and we're unable to basically measure anything any further. It very well could be that it was infinite before that it is a repeating cycle. Like, there's the Big Crunch theory, right? Like, there's a lot of, like, hypotheses for what that could have been, and not all of them include it being an actual beginning. And even if it is an actual beginning, we don't know that it's the only one. Like, and there's no reason that you need to insert God into that. Like, we don't know. There's all these different ideas about it, right? But, like, honestly, we don't know. So stop pretending like you know. I don't know. They don't know. No one knows.
Casper
Like-
says, "Thank you for convincing me to go to advanced studies next year."
You're welcome. Obviously, there was the mommy and daddy God, and they loved each other very much. /J. Yeah, and it's like fucking Greek
If
mythology.
you want to get into God's wife, what was her name?
I was just about to ask
she
you
had
that.
worshippers. God had a wife, guys. That like they just like to conveniently.
They just
forget.
delete her.
Yeah, like she's just conveniently forgotten.
Someone tell me what God's wife's name is, because I do not remember.
I
And
think it starts with an A.
yeah, I also think it starts with an A. I keep wanting to say Lilith, but that's not who
Nope,
Lilith
that's
is.
the original
No, I
woman.
know. Yeah, Lilith is the other woman, but no, it's not Mary.
No.
God MILF. Oh my God. No, I'm gonna look it up. I don't remember.
Yeah, and God's actual name is not God. It's
Esherah.
Yahweh.
It's Esherah. Her name's Esherah. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but you know, whatever. Yeah, it's Esherah. That's her name.
Asherah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna keep playing the video, but like, I don't think he understands.
She's kind of godlike.
A lot of Christians understand entropy as chaos, which, like, I get it's explained that way a lot of the time as like a shorthand, but I feel like obviously the person writing this I think is wrong, but I do think understands what
That's
entropy is, but this
Thank
person
you.
does not.
Casper contributed that in Judaism, God's name is Hashem. I hope I'm pronouncing that terribly wrong.
I imagine she's a 6'9" woman.
Goth woman.
Yeah, God's wife is God has a goth girlfriend.
Has a goth mommy dom.
Yep. Okay,
I
sorry.
should not make
Continue.
that joke.
It's funny. It's fine.
His calculations led him to the remarkable conclusion that the Creator's aim, right, the probability that we would actually get the sort of universe that we have with life, must have been accurate to 1 part in 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 123.
There is
That is
no
1
math that will
followed
do
by
that.
10
I'm sorry.
to the
on
123rd
high
power
school.
zeros. I mean, as Penrose puts it, that is a number which it would be impossible to write out in the usual decimal way, because even if you were able
But
to put a
we
zero on
don't
every particle
have
in the universe,
The
there would not
numbers
even
to
be
actually
enough particles to
calculate
do the
that, so
job.
that's just a guess.
This is the fine-tuning problem, which
Ultimately, it
is
doesn't
such a-
matter if you used math or not, because all the variables that you put into it are just guesses. Because we don't know. That's like saying, hey guys, I solved the Drake equation. The Drake equation is unsolvable. Like, we will never be able to solve the Drake equation unless we literally observe every planet at every point in time ever, which is impossible. It is a thought experiment that is just as functionally useful as the Drake equation. It is an interesting thing to think about, but they're talking about it like it's a true fact, and it's not.
True
a big problem that it's
That's not.
it's quite daunting to many physicists. Like Philip Goth, who's a physicist. He actually wrote a book
Casper wants to
last
know
year
what
titled
Drake
"Why: The
equation
Purpose of the
is.
Universe." And Goth,
The Drake equation is basically a theoretical equation to determine how many planets have life on them. And we do not have... Here, let me look up, like, the specific variables of it, because I don't actually remember. But it's basically a thought experiment used that could theoretically, if we ever had all of the variables for it, tell us how many planets have life on them. But, here, let me look up what the variables actually are, because I don't remember what they are. Here, okay. Number of civilizations with which humans could communicate, mean rate of star formation, fraction of stars that have planets, mean number of planets that could support life per star with planets, fraction of life-supporting planets that develop life, fraction of planets with life where life develops intelligence, fraction of intelligent civilizations that develop communication, mean length of time that civilizations can communicate. And obviously, like, we don't have any of that information. We do have, like, a rate of star formation, but that's obviously, you know, not the only thing. We also don't know how many stars have planets. We don't really know any of these things. It's more of a thought experiment than it is an actual equation to solve. But that's functionally what he's talking about, is like a bad version of the Drake equation. But like that's just like if we just made up numbers and put them in the Drake equation, like, okay, cool, but that doesn't actually tell us anything because we don't know what those numbers are.
It has nothing to do with Drake the singer.
Yeah, no, it has nothing to do with Drake the singer.
No, Drake the singer does not have an equation about him.
No.
You should make it.
Was an atheist for a very long time,
should.
and he's not a Christian. Although he does recognize that there's a lot of positive contributions to Christianity. So he's one of those type of people that thinks that it carries a lot of value. But he wanted to write this book basically looking at some of these problems, especially within like the fine tuning problem. And what he ended up coming to was the odds are just too great.
There is no fine tuning problem, and we don't know what the odds are.
Atheism within the book, which he previously believed in, because he ultimately concluded that there had to have been, I can't tell you the specifics or why or who did it or anything like that, but there has to have been a reason. There has to have been a reason, because the odds are
just because you can't rationalize that there's not a reason does not mean that there has to be one.
Going into a casino and you run through every single slot machine and you get the max payout every single time, right? And the counter argument that you get from people like Dawkins actually on the fine tuning problem is quite interesting, because somebody like Dawkins will say, well, you have the multiverse.
Yeah,
that has to be.
That's
the
not
answer.
what Dawkins says.
But this, there's an analogy that
it turns out Disney Marvel is not the only one using the multiverse to try to explain all the contradictions.
No, Dawkins uses the argument in the same way that I used it, that there is a possibility that the universe could exist in different ways. Dawkins is not saying there is factually a multiverse and we know it exists. The argument that Dawkins makes is the same argument that I was making, that we do not know what other types of universes may be possible to exist or may actually exist. We do not know that. And that it is very possible that there could be universes with different laws of physics than ours. It's not saying, yes, there is definitely a multiverse and we know this. Dawkins does not... I don't love Dawkins. He's kind of transphobic, but he's not stupid. Like, he still has some good shit to say. And that is not at all... I've never heard Dawkins say anything like that, and I've watched a lot of lectures from him. Like, he does not say that. That's just a blatant straw man.
Yeah, basically you're having to now create more complexity, because you have to say that there's an infinite number of universes in order to explain why this one exists. That still doesn't explain why do we live in this one. And then somebody says, well, of course you have to be aware of the fact that we live in a universe in order for, it's the Anthropic principle, right? That, well, only in a universe that could create the conditions for life to exist can we pontificate about the odds of life existing. Well, there's a problem with this, and the analogy is the firing squad analogy. And it goes like this. You're lined up against a wall. Let's say the revolution happens and the woke commies win and we're all lined up against the wall, right? So you're lined up against the wall, and the firing squad, gives the order to fire. And everybody pulls the trigger. And suddenly you just realized...
It is a non sequitur.
You're still standing. And then you ask, why am I still standing? Why am I not dead? And then one of the people who was pulling the trigger says, well, that's a dumb question to ask.
Yeah, that's just a non sequitur. Like, that's not comparable.
If you were dead, you wouldn't be asking if you were dead.
Yeah.
Like, that's not related to us not... literally not existing as like, literally...
A species.
No, as literally even the concept of being alive.
Yeah.
That's not comparable. Like,
I mean, you still existed in the first place to have that question. Like,
yeah, like, this is without existence.
And I mean, no one is saying that it's stupid to ask the question by saying that we wouldn't be here to ponder it. Like, the argument of basically, like, anthropocentrism is not saying that it's stupid to ask the question and that you shouldn't ask the question because, oh, well, that's dumb. Why are you asking that? You wouldn't be here to ask it. It's saying that it's literally physically impossible for something that does not exist to ponder its existence. It's not saying it's a stupid question. It's just saying, like, well, duh, we're here because this is how the universe is. Like, just got here, but I swear Christian arguments are so dumb. I mean, like, I don't think all of them are stupid. Like, there are some that are, like, worth discussing, but the fine-tuning argument is really just ridiculous, honestly. There's 1,000,001 refutations to it. Like, it's just not a good argument. If I was in the Spider-Verse, it cuts off part of the comments. Wait, I gotta open it. If I was in the, what are you saying that you would be in the Spider-Verse? I can't see it. I would be a rip-off Gwen, real. I don't ponder my existence. I ponder if who I am is really who I am, or if I'm faking my identity. Oh, Casper. What's your greatest defense for God? I don't really think that there are any good arguments for God being real. I think that the more, I don't remember what they're called. Like, those arguments that are like, if this, then that are more like logical arguments than proof arguments are interesting. I still can, is it the Kalam cosmological argument that I'm thinking of? The Kalam cosmological argument is interesting, I think, but I don't think it's a,
good argument.
I think it's a good argument. I can't remember all the premises of it.
What are the arguments that you've found that you've had the hardest time refuting?
I mean,
not because like they're just logical fallacies.
I don't really think that there are any, because I don't really think that there's any good apologetics arguments. Like, I think most of the things that are hard to refute is just because they are logical fallacies, so you can't attack them at their base. You have to attack the actual structure of the argument. I haven't really heard any good arguments. There are, like I said, like, the Kalam cosmological argument is interesting to think about, right? But, like, I don't actually think it's a good argument. I just think it's more interesting than others. Like, it's more fun to discuss than something like the fine-tuning argument.
Dubstep lives in the least religious state, apparently.
I envy you. Oh god, that sounds like Cat Kerr, Casper. Jesus. Okay, I'm gonna keep playing the video, but I really don't think that there are many good arguments for God. I just think that some of them are more interesting than others. Obviously, I haven't heard every apologetics argument to ever exist, so maybe there's something out there that would be a challenge to discuss, but I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. And I mean, you don't need to be, like, well-versed in them either. You just need to have brain cells. Articulating it is one thing, but actually being able to be like, well, that doesn't make sense is, you know, really, most people who aren't indoctrinated can hear something like the fine-tuning argument and be like, well, no. You know?
Well, no. Yeah.
You know the problem there, right?
Yeah.
That does not explain why you're still standing.
Yeah.
Of course, if you were dead, you wouldn't be asking the question, but that does not explain why you survived the firing squad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
No,
It does not explain anything. And by the way, I did not bring up, well, by the way, there's other
So they're
views of how the
saying that
universe
we're
works.
using it
That,
as an explanation.
let me just say, this is a topic for a future
that's
episode,
not
but,
the
but there's
explanation.
some...
Huh?
Oh, they're trying to say that we're using, like, the fact that, you know, we wouldn't be here would be an explanation as to
Yeah, I mean, it's not
the
like...
likelihood of life, and we're not using that as an explanation.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally just saying, like, basically, you have not... That's not an... It's basically just saying that's not an argument. Like, that's the main point of it, is, like, that's not an argument. Obviously, we're here to observe it. It's basically just a dismissal of their argument. What do you... I'm an atheist. Bro, reading the chat makes me glad I live in a country where half the people are atheists. I envy you. Because you survived, yeah.
big problems with the multiverse theory.
Well,
so,
and I think again, the very
This whole section is supposed to be about objective morality, by the way. I don't know why this is not its own section of, like, the fine-tuning argument, because it's literally labeled the problem of objective morality, and they don't get there until, like, halfway through it.
moderate goal we're trying to reach with this episode is just to kind of, discuss whether or not, okay, is this as unreasonable as some people make it out to be? So again, one of the consequences of not having a creator for all of this is that the universe as we currently understand it becomes not just mathematically improbable, but as close to impossible as we can possibly understand or grasp it. Because of
Improbable. Like, okay, for, again... Where are the numbers, first of all, and second of all, even if that was
you
true...
have the numbers? Give them? Can we have them? Can we see
Yeah.
the numbers?
Are the numbers in the room with us? But also, like, even if that was true, even if it is, like, insurmountably unlikely that we are here, which, again, we don't know, because we don't even know if it's possible for a universe to exist with different laws of physics, but granting him that it's improbable, obviously it is possible because we are here. So, like, that is not an argument. And again, that is granting him that it's unlikely, which we don't even know. Again, are the numbers in the room with us?
of all of the various things that have to happen just so and just perfectly and then have to maintain that status in order for this to happen. And to Christian's point, it's not good enough to say, well, the only way you can ask that question is because those things exist, so clearly those things had to exist. No. The other option is none of us exist. So it makes sense to ask the question, not to mention the fact that if
Okay,
someone had
that's the
shot
point,
you,
though.
right,
Yeah, otherwise none of
and
us
you were still
exist.
alive in conditions where they should have hit you, whether you should have died as a result of it, your automatic conclusion would not be, well, this had to happen because I'm here to ask the question. You would be like, well, no, there was something wrong with the gun, or it wasn't loaded, or they missed because the guy's a bad shot, or the guy felt some sort of moral...
Yeah, but no one is saying that there's not an answer beyond that. I'm giving the answer of maybe the universe isn't capable of existing.
They're throwing in maybe the guy felt some sort of moral obligation.
I don't
to
know.
not kill you.
I mean, like, also, if
Like,
the
that's
universe
just to
did
call
have
back
different
to
laws of
morality.
physics, there could very well be a different type of life that exists in that universe, and we don't know
person
that.
In the hypothetical firing squad has religion because they have a moral drive not to kill you.
Yeah,
And
apparently.
that's why you can ask, why am I not dead? And he can reply, you wouldn't be asking that if you weren't dead.
How the fuck yeah, exactly. How the fuck do you prove that? Like, we don't know. There could be other universes that have life. There could not be. There could be the physical possibility that life could exist in a universe different than the one that we exist within. Again, it could be possible that the universe couldn't exist without these laws of physics. We don't know that. Like, there is no number for that. The alternative is not like, okay, well then we don't exist, because maybe something else would exist. There have been other times when different things did exist and we did not. Like, this is just like such a bad argument.
Tinge and decided he didn't want to, like, your mind would go through that. It wouldn't go to the conclusion like, well, this is the only possible outcome that could have existed because I'm here to ask the question.
Can I also bring up that, like, there's other problems with this, like, scientism or materialism approach that so many atheists bring to the table, like Hume, for example. I was reading through the quote that you read off at the beginning of the show, and there's something at the very beginning of his quote that...
What?
Is that a way of saying, like, racism against religion, scientism?
I don't even... He said it before materialism. I think he meant the word materialism, and he didn't know the word materialism at first, to be completely honest. But also, like, that's... Okay, this is a thing that they do... they start to do throughout it, is they just assume that the alternative to their belief system, something like materialism, is bad. Like, okay, what if... I'm a materialist. I think that the only things that exist are things that are observable in some capacity. Not necessarily observable with your eyes, but, like, metaphysical things do not exist. I'm a materialist in that sense. And why is that bad, though? Like, just because you don't like what that implies does not make it untrue. And he does this later with nihilism, too, and subjective morality, where, like, just because you do not like what this thing implies does not make it untrue. Like...
refutes it in addition to the way that you were refuting it earlier, where he says, if we take in our hand any volume of divinity or school metaphysics, he's attacking metaphysics. Which is really interesting because you literally cannot do science without metaphysics. In fact, you can't do almost anything without metaphysics.
Oh my god.
Well, and again, that's we're going to kind of get to...
Metaphysics is not a science. It's literally, like, outside of the observable universe. Like, yes, you can do in fact, you're supposed to do science without metaphysics. Like...
that point here in a little bit. But let's talk about some of the other things that become very, very difficult without God. And this is something that a lot of times, again, atheists will confront us on, and we'll talk about things like objective morality. And their response...
They're getting to it now.
A lot of times is, because we'll make the claim that, well, without God, how can you have objective truth or objective morality? And they'll say, well, that's ridiculous.
You don't. That's not a bad thing. Just because you don't like it does not make it untrue. I'm sorry that you're uncomfortable with the fact that objective morality does not exist, but that does not make it so that objective morality has to exist because you're uncomfortable with the alternative.
I don't need God to tell me not to murder. I'm not saying you need God to tell you not to murder. You need to explain why murdering is why it is morally wrong. And usually they'll come up with some sort of, like, utilitarian response. Well, if I murder them, then someone else might murder me. Like, okay, why is that wrong? Why is it wrong? I'm not asking you why it doesn't work well within society. I'm asking you, why is it wrong?
Okay, I don't think that there is an objective wrong.
I don't think there needs to be... So their refutal to the argument of, I just wouldn't murder someone, I don't want to do that. And they're like, no, you need to explain why it's wrong. Why do we need to explain why it's wrong?
Exactly. Like, you're starting from an assumption.
Cause, but also, like, murder is inconvenient. We are a social species. It benefits us not to kill each other.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of papers showing that, first of all, morality is not an exclusively human trait. The idea of, like, philosophy and pondering on morality is human, but morality is not exclusively human. It is a trait of a social species. Crows exhibit morality.
Yeah, like, why don't every animal of every species just kill each other so that they have greater access to prey if they are a prey-consuming animal?
Yeah, I mean, the honest answer to this question is that it is not objectively wrong, but that humans are a social species, and that for us as a species and for our individual bloodlines to progress, it is more likely for that to happen if we exist in groups. So killing a member of your own group creates distrust in that group, and it creates you being outcast from that group, and you less likely to pass on your genes. And that is the unfortunate truth of how morality exists.
Evolutionarily, we don't like that.
Yeah, like, the point of life is to pass on its genes.
An evolutionary no-no is not passing on your genes, Parker.
Yeah, but I mean, like, and, like, morality, again, like, the philosophy of morality is human because we are intelligent enough to discuss it, but the concept of having morality is not uniquely human. It exists in, like, off the top of my head, corvids, cetaceans, other primates.
Not dolphins.
Dolphins sort of do. It's just bad morality from our perspective, but they do have like even actually cetaceans, specifically orcas, have forms of culture, right? Like, if you that's part of the problem with the depression of orcas that are captured from the wild, is that orcas basically essentially have different languages. So if you take two orcas from different sides of the world and put them in a tank together, they will not be able to communicate with each other because they don't literally have languages because structure is a part of language. but they functionally have different languages. They can't communicate with each other. And they have forms of morality. It's not what we would consider morality on a philosophical level, but it is the idea of altruism, that this thing that I am doing does not directly benefit me in any way, but I will help this other person, this other creature that is a part of my same species, because I don't want them to be in pain. Like rats, for example, rats also exhibit morality. There's been studies showing that rats will forego food in order to prevent other rats from starving. Like, altruism...
You owe me $35.
Okay. But like, or like corvids, for example, again, will like help other crows out of a box instead of getting food. Again, like with orcas, they literally have forms of culture. They have familial ties where they will choose to save a family member over a random animal, right? Like, this is not a uniquely human concept. The idea to think about it and conceptualize it and do philosophy is human. That does not make morality human. It is the consequence of a social species. Just because you don't like what that implies, just because you don't like that, yeah, maybe that means there is no greater meaning to murder being wrong other than it is inconvenient for the survival of our species, does not make it untrue. Like,
they need it to be... Their problem is the assumption that it needs to be based in some sort of spiritual or greater understanding of...
Yeah, they need it to be objective. Like, they need it to be like, this is wrong, period.
Need it to be, murder is wrong because God said so. Dad told me not to murder people who are of my same race, specifically, because in the Bible it's specifically about don't murder those of your same race.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, dogs are also another animal that exhibits morality and altruism because wolves are a social species. Lions also exhibit, like, pretty much any social species, like, from rats to birds to mammals, exhibits morality. It is on varying levels and varying levels of complexity. Like, the morality exhibited by a group of gorillas is significantly more complex than that of a crow. But nonetheless, crows display altruism. Like, that is morality. Altruism is a feature of morality. So how can you say that, like, it has to be... Does that mean that crows listen to God? Like, are crows talking to God and going, well, God told me not to murder people, and therefore murder is objectively wrong, so I won't do it? No, they're going, well, this is my group. I want this group to stay alive because I'm a part of this group, so I'm going to do things that may negatively impact me in the favor of staying a part of this group. Are crows talking to God? I'm sorry, they're not. Yeah, elephants, also great example. Elephants... Like, it's literally just, I want to stay a part of this group because it heightens my chance of survival more than putting myself at a disadvantage for helping part of this group. Like, I don't think crows are sitting there and contemplating what God wants them to do. They're just going, this other animal is part of my family, and I do not want it to experience suffering because I do not like experiencing suffering. Therefore, I will stop it from experiencing suffering. It's not sitting there and contemplating God and morality. It's just going, suffering, bad. Don't suffering. Like...
Why is it wrong on some sort of fundamental moral level that
it's
even
not.
if you can come up with certain, utilitarian justifications for it, we would still say that was wrong. You should not have murdered that innocent person. And the answer is that when they become...
It's just
when
a
they get
feature
very
of
honest about it,
language.
and some
Saying
of them
something
are,
is
they'll
wrong
say,
is
well,
just a feature
it's
of
not about
language.
morality. There is
It's
no
not
objective morality. It's
literal.
not wrong in some sort of cosmic moral sense that I killed that person. It's
not beneficial to
Yeah.
us as...
Yeah, but I mean, he doesn't like the answer, it's not beneficial, so he just goes on with that can't be true because I don't like it.
just not useful to me. Okay, well, that has some pretty significant implications for the way we look at things like justice, right? Because justice is not saying you shouldn't do
Just
something
because you
it's not
don't like
good
those
for you.
implications does not make them untrue.
Justice is a direct implication. It's a direct appeal to some sort of moral authority that goes beyond your individual preferences. And so sometimes I'll see people say things like, well, it's because it's the law and because we democratically elected our lawmakers.
No one says that
so
the
if
law
your
is
democratically elected
equivalent to
lawmakers
morality.
decided
No
it was
one says
okay
that
to
ever.
own other human beings and beat
Literally
them if they
no
don't
one
work
on
for
the
you,
history of the
you're
earth has
fine
ever
with that.
said
You have no
that.
moral qualms with it. Well, no, I do. But your democratically elected leaders came to that conclusion.
I mean, there
So that,
is
again, if you still have a
levels
problem
of
with it, you can't come to the
morality
conclusion.
as you go through life.
Yeah.
That one such stage of morality, which is like a pubescent level understanding of morality, because that's what stage it is. Like, you're literally like kid. Anyway, like, is, law equals morals, but like, again,
It's because you're developing your understanding of
yeah,
like how morality works
the
and how the law
literal-
works.
Yeah, and the literal explanation of it is that it comes down to an individual understanding of morality.
Yeah, like he's saying like, oh well, that has significant implications on justice. Yeah, it does. That doesn't make it wrong. Like
Conclusion that that's the ultimate source
like
for
wrong
morality.
isn't incorrect.
You know, again, it's the political society idea that if the political society is determined that this is moral, it's moral. No, politicians get to decide what's legal and illegal. They don't get to decide what's moral and immoral. Not in any sort of objective sense.
I've literally never heard
and this
anyone
poses
say that,
a real
like
problem.
ever.
Now, again, some atheists will come to the conclusion, well, it doesn't pose any problem at all. We determine that certain things are better for the advancement of civilization, and therefore we do those things. It's like, okay, but again, the problem for that is as soon as somebody else comes along and decides that you not being here is good for the advancement of civilization, you can say, I don't like that. You can say, I don't find it very useful for me, but you don't get to say that it's objectively morally wrong.
And we're
Okay,
so therefore
not.
this
how are we getting to, and then they came for, like, how are we getting to that logic?
Because he's saying that
First
since
they
morality
came
is subjective, if someone else's morality dictates that they can kill you because that's moral in their own moral compass,
Like,
then
that's-
subjective morality is bad because
So
someone may have
morality-
different morals than
hold
you.
on. So because somebody has subjective morality and we're just okay with this, that suddenly means that, yeah, no, because somebody wants to kill me, that means that I'm fine with it because I'm fine with subjective morality.
That's what I'm getting from it, but like I think he neglects
What
the fact
a
that people generally
straw man.
discuss things. Like most
Just
people
what
don't
a
just go kill people because you're like he's taking it in a very literal perspective. Like yes, it is true that generally it is an inconvenience to the progression of the species. That does not mean that people who view it that way are just going to go, well, I get to go kill people because they disagree with me. Like
Concept of justice that you put forward is meaningless. It's meaningless. It's just it's essentially might makes right. Whoever has the most power to impose their will at any given time
No,
is
it's
the moral
not.
actor in the relationship.
This is why you
That's, like,
rapidly
such
get
a
to nihilism
jump.
Yes.
within an atheistic framework. There's a lot
nihilism is not inherently bad, and this part annoys me.
of people that implicitly know that, regardless of their theological positions, but I don't think that they necessarily appreciate why
Again, 'cause they
it's so
think-
common.
they
Like,
think it's pessimist
atheism breeds
and
nihilism
again,
by
don't
definition.
understand what pessimistic
Certainly materialism
nihilism
does. I mean, I would
is,
argue that also
or
atheism,
negative
but
connotation of the word pessimism.
Yeah.
like it breeds nihilism by definition because it's not that there's no way for you to sort out what's right and wrong. It's that there is no such thing
As right.
as right and wrong.
Breeding
That's the
murder.
paradigm shift that I don't think people, understand. They look at it as, well, wait a second. I'm nice to people. I don't murder people. I help the poor. In fact, I help the poor more than you Christians claim to do it.
By the way, that's not true.
Well, no, I know it's not
By the way, that's not true. Literally, where did you get that information?
true. But the point I'm trying to make is that, okay, but that, unfortunately, that doesn't actually help your argument. I'm glad that you're behaving in moral ways. What I'm saying is that you don't have any ultimate justification for it other than you find it.
Why does that matter to you, though? And why does their justification matter to you as long as they're doing moral things? Like, why does it matter to you what their reasoning for that is? If that person, like they said, is not murdering people, is doing things to help other people, whatever, why do you give a shit if they believe that that is because of an objective truth of the universe, or if they believe that it's because, well, I don't like hurting people and suffering is bad?
Because
Like,
then they believe that it can be argued against.
yeah, but I mean, what's bad about arguing against it? Like, having civil discussions about philosophy has been like a function of human culture since we've been able to speak. Like, since before we had language. Like,
Useful or preferential. And I had somebody once tell me they were very upset when I brought up this point. And they said, oh, if you didn't have God, you'd be around, so you just go murder and raping people. No, but I still wouldn't be able to explain why those things were wrong, just like you can't. And
I can't explain it. I just explained to you why it's wrong. I just did. So, and you don't like that answer because it's not objective, but it is the answer.
she finally got so frustrated with me. She goes, I'll tell you what my morality is. My morality is that if I know if I'm a good person and I can look at myself in the mirror and know that I'm helping people, then that's what's moral. And I said, well, that sounds a little bit sociopathic.
Why?
She said, do you even know what a sociopath
Sociopathic.
is? I said, yes, a sociopath is someone who
don't
can justify
know what
anything that they do, provided they can look
psychology
at themselves in the
is.
mirror.
He said, listen to what he just described sociopath is. Because it's so wrong.
And she said, do you even know what a sociopath is? I said, yes, a sociopath is someone that can justify anything that they do, provided they can look at themselves in the mirror and believe that they're a good person.
Right.
That's
A
not
sociopath
what a
is another
sociopath
word
is.
for ASPD, which is literally just a mental illness that results in a lowered or non-existent ability to perceive empathy. And that is not cognitive empathy. A lot of people with ASPD use cognitive or learned empathy. That, like, basically what I'm saying of, like, and this is something that I, as like a low empathy autistic person, also do, of like, okay, I'm not feeling anything emotionally about this specific situation, but I understand that it is not good to hurt people because either it's not my place to do that, it is not productive, it is not helpful, it makes other people feel bad, and I don't like feeling bad. Like, it's just having that, like, most people who have ASPD are generally use cognitive empathy. that is not a bad thing. Like, and also that is not what a sociopath is. It's literally just, that's an outdated term for ASPD. It is not someone who can justify anything that they do to themselves, like, or anything that they do. Like, that is not what it means, because everyone has to justify their actions to themselves, whether they have ASPD or no mental health issues or something in between. It does not matter. That is not what sociopath means.
Yeah.
A lack of empathy also does not, yeah, Casper, a lack of empathy does not equate to a lack of morals, because cognitive empathy exists. You can not have an emotional feeling about someone else's feelings and still understand that
But
the
they
thing...
don't understand that. The church is traditionally anti-neurodiversity, so that makes sense why they wouldn't be understanding of different emotional experiences.
Yeah, I mean, most people with ASPD are not criminals or violent people.
Or religious.
Yeah, or religious. And, yeah, and, like, even people who are, ultimately, it's still not what he's describing it as. Even people with ASPD who do not practice cognitive empathy, it still is not what he's describing it as.
Going around killing people.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're, like, Ted Bundy, and at that point, it's like, you're a bad person. Like, people without ASPD also kill people. Like...
That's ultimately when we're talking about sociopath, we're talking about someone that can essentially justify their own actions because for them, in their world, on what they defined as moral or right or just, they met the threshold. And there is no objective threshold outside of them.
That is literally just not what a sociopath is.
Saying that this is wrong or this is right.
There's I mean, remember when I brought up the metaphysics thing? I was kind of jumping the gun because it's
and then push that definition for certain illnesses to push not only stigma but also their own ideas.
I mean, I wouldn't even say that that's the social perception of what a sociopath is, because usually people see, like, sociopath as basically someone who likes to hurt people.
I mean, my understanding of sociopath before I knew what it actually, like, equated to, was just not being able to feel emotion.
Yeah, and I mean, that is, to some people with ASPD have muted emotions, but most people with ASPD do have emotions and have a lot of those emotions turn into, like, less, what people would consider, like, forgivable, like a lot more anger or, frustration or things like that, or have more muted emotions, but, like, that is also not a definitive trait. Like, it is there's a diagnostic criteria for ASPD in which people can and do still feel emotions, and some people feel less emotions or more emotions, but ultimately it is, at its core, a lack of emotional empathy. Like, and again, that does not preclude you from practicing cognitive empathy.
And Nick's over here, like, nodding his head. Yes, Christian, you were jumping the gun. No, he's right, and I was wrong, but, like, the reason I brought that up was because I think that it's intertwined with the idea of objective morality, because it's not, remember when I said that, it's not that you can't just divide good from evil, it's that the things don't even exist as concepts within a materialistic or atheistic framework.
Why is that bad, though?
Objective reality itself does not exist in everything within it. And here's what I mean.
No.
If everything is just a combination of atoms, just pieced together in a particular way, and that's all, to quote Carl Sagan, that's all that the universe, all that it is the universe, ever was, is, or will be, right? Then things that we kind of take for granted in our day-to-day lives, regardless of what your religion is or your theological disposition, they don't exist. And what I mean is...
Yeah, I mean, there's a Vsauce video about this, actually, called What is a Chair? About, like, the definition of words and what things are and what makes actually something exist.
Plato's theory of the forms.
Yeah, thank you. Plato's theory of the forms. Like, that is actually, like, a philosophical discussion that's been had for centuries. But again...
by Plato.
Yeah, but, like, if you don't perceive, like, for example, if this cup next to me, right, is, like, if I'm like, well, that's just a collection of atoms and it's not actually a cup. Like, if I decide to perceive reality that way, what is wrong with that? Like, what is bad about that? Like, sure, it might not be how you perceive it, and that's fine, but, like... Why is that bad? Like, he's just saying this it's bad.
It is bad.
Why?
Like, if you're perceiving something differently, like, that is objectively one thing, like, say you are perceiving that cup as a gun.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But that comes down more into, like, psychosis than, like...
Well, but also, like, okay, we'll say you're perceiving it as something harmless, like a paperweight instead of a cup.
Yeah.
You're still objectively observing reality differently in a way that impacts you and, like... impacts your ability to communicate efficiently.
I mean, but, like, if you understand it, like, on a philosophical level and not a very, very literal level, like, of just understanding that the cup is made out of atoms, like...
Yeah.
Things like logic and reason and objective truth and morality and consciousness, for that matter,
are human concepts.
Like these things that we don't really think about when we're going about our lives. We just take them for granted as existing. Under an atheistic framework, they don't exist. They're either illusions or they don't actually have any sort of objective... standalone position
Yeah,
in objective existence.
They're not authoritative in the sense that they exist regardless of how we feel about them.
Yes.
But what is wrong with that? Like, yeah, morality, I don't think that morality exists without something to perceive it. Why is that bad? Because I'm still not going out murdering people, so why is that bad?
And
They're
honestly,
at best useful fictions.
Yes.
And at worst, they don't exist at all.
yeah. They're artificial. They're just something that we
They are
created
useful
to
fictions.
make
Why
ourselves
is
either
that
feel better
wrong?
or to achieve certain outcomes or whatnot. And I think that's the thing that people need to come to grips with is
Yes. Sorry, I'm doing something for my boyfriend real quick. I'm going to read the chat while I do that. ASPD is a cluster B personality disorder, yes. This man needs to make, like, his hairline and take a few steps back. Help. Yeah, literally.
We're insulting them based on appearances. The guy with the bad hairline also was not rotated as a baby.
Yeah.
He's got a very cone-shaped head.
He's got a Huel head a bit. Sorry, I'm taking a picture for my boyfriend.
Yeah, because I need to create an Etsy listing.
Look at Robbie, she's a ball.
I won't be selling these ones, but I will be selling ones made like them, so...
Look at Robbie, she's a ball. Look at her, she's a ball. You're not looking at her. She's a ball.
Ball.
You need to get closer because the lighting is making it so that it's blurry. Okay.
Now I need one with...
Do we,
No.
do we have to do this while I'm streaming?
No.
Okay. I've had many coffee. Brain is funky tea. Real. Patrick Star looking at. Oh my god, yeah.
Hi,
Okay.
soy.
I'm gonna continue the video. But yeah.
is that when we look at, is it reasonable to believe in God? Well, again, when I look at Christianity and I look at the evidence presented out in Scripture, I find Scripture to be
Scripture
sound.
is not evidence.
I find the evidence that's presented within Scripture to be, I think it makes sense. I think it's reasonable.
I'm
I think
sorry that
eyewitnesses,
you
I
feel
think
that way,
people
but
made
it's
certain
not,
decisions
and it's
based
not
off of what they did.
eyewitnesses.
It seemed
It's literally not. The New Testament was written 40 to 100 years after Jesus' death, verifiably, and the first account of Jesus from a non-biblical source was 93 years after his supposed death. So, no, there are no eyewitness accounts in the Bible.
makes sense if Jesus was who he claimed to be, right? I see all that. I look at that. I'm like, that all seems to be inductive reasoning. That seems to be a lot of evidence. The other
If Jesus was who he claimed to be. If. That is a big-ass if.
thing I look at it is, okay,
I'm not taking more pictures right now.
Okay.
is it more probable that our universe is fine-tuned or not fine-tuned? Well, I would say it's infinitely more probable that it is fine-tuned.
And I am saying, where the fuck are the numbers? Because we still don't have them and they are still not in the room with us. We do not know the probability of that in the slightest at all. Where the fuck are the numbers?
Right? Is it probable that objective morality, is it objectively bad to murder a small child and eat them? Is that objective?
I mean, no, it's not. I don't think you should do it, but no, it's not. I'm sorry that you don't like that answer. There is, without humans
He
to perceive it.
doesn't- He wants to eat the kid so bad.
He really just wants a child sandwich.
He's hungry.
He's hungry. Give him a snack. He just wants a leg, just a little bite.
Objectively bad. I would say it is. I would say it's
Help, soy. Soy said baby back ribs, yummy, question mark. That's what baby back ribs actually are.
objectively bad
If
to
you
do
have
that,
the
right? Okay,
munchies.
if you believe that too, then you need to come to the conclusion.
Okay, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that it is objectively wrong outside of our ability to perceive it. So no, he's just assuming that other people believe in objective morality without saying that they do. But no, I don't. I'm sorry that you don't like that answer, but no. I don't think you should do that because suffering hurts and I don't want people to suffer. That does not mean that there is some objective, metaphysical, measurable thing to say that that is objectively wrong. It hurts people. And I don't like that people hurt because I don't like being hurt. It is really that simple. Like, I'm sorry that you don't like that answer and that you can't possibly conceive that anyone comes to a different conclusion than you, but that doesn't make it untrue and that doesn't mean that there aren't people who come to that different conclusion.
Do you like him?
can only be objectively
Yes.
immoral if there's some sort of lawgiver which says that it's objectively immoral regardless of any justification, regardless of any evolutionary justification. You can come up with that, right? It doesn't matter.
It
It's
doesn't
wrong.
need to be objectively
It's wrong because
moral.
something is so inherent about that act that nothing
It is
can
not,
justify
though. It's
now, if you
not.
don't believe that, if you think, well, no, there might be some conditions where it's perfectly okay to do something like this because you felt like it, right? We're not even talking about,
No
a
one is
horrible
saying
scenario
that. We're
where
just
you're,
saying that there
in a
is not
survival
an
situation, right?
objective
Something would be wrong.
fact
We're
of
just
the
talking about, like,
universe
it
that
was cloudy on a
is
Tuesday,
saying
you
that
didn't
doing
have
something
anything
is
in the
wrong.
pantry. And when people ask, like, why are you using such an extreme example? Because extreme example extreme examples provide evidence of a fundamental truth.
Not in this case, because you still haven't explained why it needs to be objectively wrong to not be done.
Because if we're talking about the very existence of objective morality, then I want to give you the most extreme example possible so you can sit there and think to yourself, okay, am I really prepared to say, well, no, I may not prefer that, but if somebody else did it, I couldn't say it.
Yes, I just said that. I did. I'm not saying if somebody else did it, I couldn't say it's wrong. That's a stupid thing. That's what he's... Here, I'll let him...
They were morally wrong?
Yeah, there, see? But, like, I am prepared to say that because it's what's true. Just because you don't like it doesn't make it untrue, and it also doesn't mean that you should do it either. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. I can say that this is not objectively wrong in a metaphysical, observable, measurable sense, and also say, no, you should not kill and eat a child. Like, those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Because if you're saying morality doesn't exist, then if somebody did that right in front of you, you'd have to come to the conclusion, I don't like it maybe, I don't find it useful maybe, but you couldn't say it was objectively wrong. And if you're willing to accept a universe on something like that, that's a pretty scary thing.
I mean, I see
You
people...
say it's
Just 'cause it's a pretty-
objectively wrong.
He literally concluded, well, then that's a pretty... Just because you don't like it does not make it untrue. Well, if you're willing to accept that, then that's a pretty scary thing. Good for you? I don't know. I'm sorry that you don't like it. Like, what am I supposed to tell you? No, I'm gonna lie to myself because it makes you specifically feel better? Like, no.
If there's a situation you can contrive, no matter how batshit insane, where it is okay to eat a child,
That's just such
there you go. It's not. There's no such thing as objectivity.
Yeah.
There is a situation you could contrive that is batshit insane, sure, but where you would have to eat a child.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's say the child is, like, has malaria and is on a boat dying, and if you don't eat the child, then you're
Or
gonna die,
yours-
and then you both die.
Or everybody's starving to death and this child is dying anyways.
Yeah, like, if everyone is starving to death and this child is gonna die anyway, and if you don't kill... Like, a trolley problem, but advanced, right? Like, if the child is gonna die anyway, but if you don't eat the child now, then you will also die. So then 2 people die instead of 1. Then I would say it is morally acceptable to kill and eat the child because the child is going to die anyway, and if you don't, then 2 people will die instead of 1. That is an absurd, ridiculous thing, but he gave an absurd and ridiculous example, so I am giving one too. What if the child is a Nazi?
What if the child...
I think it is morally acceptable. Well, no, because children get indoctrinated really easily.
Like to religion.
Yeah. Where did the blonde lady come from? She was here at the beginning. They just don't want to let her talk, I guess. I mean, she was the one who brought up Darwin.
I mean, it is Christianity.
Yeah, it is. They're suffer not a woman to teach or whatever, right?
Making allowances for entire civilizations that operated that way.
Sure.
You know, where they did human sacrifice. They ate people. They hunted down people and ate them. And, you know, now the way things are framed up, they'll make it sound like we are the absolute worst for stopping all of that from happening. So I do kind of...
No one's saying that it's bad to stop that from happening because you can have measures of what you think you should or shouldn't do that are not objective. Like, I don't think that killing and eating people on a sacrificial religious basis is, nice. I don't like it. In his words, I can say I don't like that because I don't like people suffering, and I think 99% of people alive can agree with that. So I don't think that it's bad, like she's implying, to stop people from doing that. I just don't think that there is some greater reason that it's bad other than suffering kind of sucks.
Also,
Like,
why are they, like, acting like they're so anti-suffering when their book says kill people?
yeah, like your book literally, God, what about the flood, bestie? What about fucking, what is his name? Abraham or whatever?
You
like
need to watch the ContraPoints Twilight video. She goes into the Bible.
Okay.
She goes into the Bible hard.
Okay, I will watch it at some point.
It's honestly, it's barely about Twilight.
To the point where it's like, because Christianity came into various places through missionaries and things like that. And
You've seen the meme, right, Tina?
And-
The Aztec meme?
If
where
she's
it's
about
like,
to
you know,
imply
they're
that
chopping the heart out, and
Christianity
then
is
it's
like,
oh look, here comes the
that
fall light, and it's
colonization
like
was
the
actually
Spanish.
good
Well,
because
that's
it
because that's
stopped the
also,
evil
like,
indigenous
Christianity,
people, I'm gonna lose
basically
my
our
shit.
mandate is to go and share what we
You
know
should
and what we
react
believe
to
because
the
it's true.
ContraPoints
And so
Twilight video,
you're
actually.
where
But I
Christians
wanna
will look at
finish
it
this.
as
Yeah.
we are, you know, basically the hands and feet of Christ to go and rescue these people out of this.
Yeah, no,
this,
colonization is not rescuing, actually. Sorry, it's not. That's really gross, and I'm not even entertaining
White
that.
savior
belief
complex.
system. Which
Yeah, it
is
is a white
ultimately,
savior complex.
not true, and ultimately in
Oh,
worship.
okay, sorry. The indigenous religions were ultimately not true, so it's good that I went and lied to them again with a different religion and killed a bunch of people. Yeah, like, no, actually. No, and you also don't get to say if indigenous or... I mean, I don't think indigenous religions are true either, but I do think that they're significantly less harmful in a lot of times than Christianity is, because the thing that she's describing, colonization and missions and shit like that, are not really a part of indigenous religions. They're not really a part of a lot of
something other than
religions.
God. And so, we do see that left to their own devices, societies won't always come up with stuff that the rest of us feel are moral now. And so,
Dude,
Wait.
are you fucking kidding me?
She just pulled a xenophobia.
Yeah, she just pulled a xenophobia.
Left
Okay.
to their own devices, other societies without Christianity would not come to moral conclusions.
And I'm sorry, but I think a lot of, at least indigenous
Similar.
American communities are a lot more moral than Christianity is.
Christianity, literally, like what Casper said in chat earlier, Christianity also, subscribes to the belief that, yes, a woman should be forced to marry her assaulter.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry, but, like, no. Like, just
do
no.
you know of common indigenous practice against, in terms of assault?
No, I don't.
Mm.
Don't
I-
believe that
I
there are
think
any
that,
that I'm aware of, at
know,
least not
it happening right in front of you
For
might give you more of a sense of urgency. But there's a lot
Cherokee,
of
but
people
that's
that are
most
just
of
accepting
the
of the fact that this
indigenous
happened.
religion that I know
Tina, it's
is
even
regulated.
worse than that.
Well, wait a second.
Avowed atheistic societies, state atheistic societies, have done. It's not that. Oh, look at what can be permitted. Look at what happens when you have societies that are supposedly built around rationality.
Okay, so
and
we're just
scientism.
getting
I mean,
into
the first
I hate the USSR
quasi-atheistic
now.
society was
Which,
the one
like,
that French
yeah,
Revolution
that's
produced.
fair,
And
but
they
also
started chopping
the
people's heads off
problem
because
there
they were
was
the
not
wrong type of
atheism. The
revolution.
problem there,
Well,
the problem with the USSR was fucking authoritarianism, not atheism. Back in the USSR, you don't know how lucky you are, boy. Oh, the Ukraine
Okay,
girls
copyright.
really. What?
Copyright.
Yeah, I can't sing the Beatles song. Leave the West behind.
Okay, you did copyright.
Okay, sorry, I love that song.
I want to rein this in a little bit, right? Because again, somebody's going to instantly come back like, okay, well, look at these so-called Christian societies that did X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
The difference
She's fucking offending them, saying, look at these Christian societies that did X, Y, Z, and she's saying, well, actually, that's good, though.
is that within that Christian society, you can point back to Scripture and say, but that policy posed a contradiction to what Scripture said to do. You may have done it in the
Who cares what Scripture says? Why is Scripture a useful resource? You have not provided
I'm sorry,
any evidence for
you're
why
saying
Scripture
it
is a
poses
useful resource.
Contradiction to what Scripture said to do. Scripture said, like, again, not to.
Is
bring
your
up the
shirt
ContraPoints-
polyester?
Yeah, like not to bring up the ContraPoints video again, but to bring it up again. So, the commandment is not to kill Israelites, and
Yeah.
then it said, "May you," like, I don't have the specific way it was worded, but basically listing off a bunch of other races and saying,
Yeah.
"Go kill them."
Yeah, I mean, it's literally just don't kill your own community, other people don't
Yeah.
matter. Like,
And she actually goes into how all the commandments are usually don't do this unless.
yeah.
Like, don't commit adultery can really just be read as don't have relations unless you're married.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like, again, who the fuck cares if it goes against Scripture? Because not everyone believes in Scripture, and you've not provided a reason for us to value Scripture. Like, to someone who does not believe that that is real, you have not provided a reason why something not following Scripture is bad.
the name of this, but you can't find justification for what you did here. The point that we're trying to make is that in a society where essentially there is no objective morality, and by objective morality I don't mean the majority voted for it, I don't mean the majority of people find it useful or culturally acceptable, I mean objective right or wrong, because there is a higher being which says this is right and this is wrong.
You haven't proven that higher being exists in the first place. Again, you not liking something does not make it untrue. You have to prove that higher being exists in the first place for that to be a valuable argument.
You don't have that. You can essentially ultimately justify anything, right? Which is why you had ancient societies that sacrificed their children to Baal in order to try to get a better crop.
Sorry, I just thought.
Right,
of
and
this, but
you
remember how she was bringing up the colonization of America
Yeah.
and how they brought amazing morality, like they brought amazing morality to the indigenous peoples, but do they not want to talk about the Republic of America, like the Federation of America? I think it was
Confederates, you mean?
No, not the Confederacy. There was an original model of the American government before we had democracy, where basically
you
you
mean
could
like
literally just do whatever you wanted because they wanted to rebel against Britain
Yeah.
so hard that they created a system of government that didn't work, and it's just like, yeah, they brought such morality when really
Yeah.
they like.
I mean, also, do we
created
not
it.
want to talk about, like, smallpox blankets?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you brought such good morality, where do smallpox blankets go in that?
Where do killing kids? Where do
Where does
forcing
the
people-
colonists going to
where-
Utah and taking the heads
Where
of
does the
indigenous
Trail of
men
Tears-
and putting them on a post to scare the indigenous women and children that they stole as slaves out of running away? Where does that become moral? Where did the colonists putting the literal heads of indigenous men on posts to
Trail
scare
of
indigenous
Tears.
slaves? Yeah, what about my family is Cherokee. Like, where is the trail? What about the Trail of Tears, right? What about again, smallpox blankets, like residential schools? Where does all of that fit into you bringing morality to the Americas? Because I don't really see how putting people's heads on posts and forcibly
sinners.
Yeah,
We're
like
sinners. We can't resist the moral darkness.
yeah, I mean, like,
we
seriously,
just know it's wrong.
where the fuck? Whenever you say that,
You know what really
like,
sucks to me too
huh.
is like they claim to be such, objective morality wins and like murder is bad, and then it's like, okay, but you guys justify murder with your religion a lot. You
Yeah.
justify a lot of things that you do with your religion, or even when you come to a point where you literally cannot justify what you're doing with your religion, you bring it back to your religion saying, well, we're sinful creatures, we can't resist, and it's like, no, you should be held to a better standard than that. You
yeah,
shouldn't be held to the, well, we were created sinful, so, sometimes we're gonna sin, even though we know it's bad.
yeah, it's basically just it's a cop out.
Yeah.
Also, why don't they ever mention how warped the Bible is now versus when it was written? Because they don't like inconsistencies. They can't admit that there's anything wrong with the Bible. It has to be infallible. Like, I mean, again, like, also, how can she come in here and be like, we brought them morality so that they stopped killing each other? Like, first of all, let's not ignore the fact that people in Europe killed each other all the fucking time. And second of all, you killed, like, I believe that, like, over 80% of the indigenous population of North America or something was wiped out by colonists by a combination of disease and violence. So, like, again, how is you, like, let me actually, I don't remember
Xander.
what this specific thing is. I'm gonna look up what it's called.
I'm back to monitoring chat. Parker, I'm making a strawberry cigarette.
Oh my god. Here, this is not the one. It's something field. Here, is this it? I think this is it. I'm trying to find correct information about it, because this is a really fucked up thing. I talked about it in an old video, but I don't remember which one it is, because there's a lot of them where the Mormons just killed indigenous people. I'm just looking at Wikipedia to make sure I'm getting this. Yeah, this is not the right one. There's a bunch of them. I think it might be this one, because I think it said something Meadows in it. Is this it? Right.
Oh, I'm crocheting, Casper, so I made these arm warmers that look like they're cigarettes, but now I'm making one that's more pink and strawberry themed.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the specific one of many violent acts, and I can't remember which one it is. I could just go to my own video and look at the sources in that, but I don't want to do that because it'll start playing my video, and it's an old video.
Xander's popping off.
Is it this one? I don't know which one it is. Anyway, there was a massacre in Utah from the Mormon settlers who basically took indigenous people as slaves and killed all of the men. And I really wish I could remember which. I'm gonna go to my own video actually and find the source, because it's worth finding.
Look at what Xander said in chat. I think he's trying to be helpful.
Wait, I can't. Redfield, maybe here. Let me look that up. Renfield. Because it was called something massacre. I don't know. I can't find anything about that. I'm not sure. I'm gonna look at the source of my old video because I can't remember what it is. Oh, I didn't label my sources on this. That's annoying.
Something for you to do.
Yeah, I do now. Oh, here, Battle Creek Massacre is one of them. Here, oh, well, there's a bunch of them. Well, that says other. Which one is the one that I'm talking about in the video, though? Because these aren't... okay, yeah, this is why I need to label my sources. I'm trying to look at them and figure out which one it is. It wasn't a book, so... I'll just look up the ones in the description that I haven't already looked at.
The Mormons refer to specific things under harder to find names because how dare they ever do wrong?
Yeah. It's probably, I talked about that one a lot in,
Mormons Massacre Timpanogos.
I don't know. I don't remember the details of it. I don't know.
Casper said L for not labeling your sources.
Yeah. And let me just copy paste my links and see which one of these, because some of these I know are not it, but it's not that. That's just Mormon. It's not specific. Okay, I don't think it was a book. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But basically, the point. You get the point. I'm going on a tangent, but you get the point. I'm distracting myself.
You can even make modern day comparisons. You can make modern day comparisons for the things that we sacrifice or we accept or we allow to take place in order to justify our own preferences, right? So it's not as if morality goes away. It's that objective morality, right? That which is beyond ourselves and which we are required to conform to. That's what goes away, and it gets replaced with subjective morality. And so again, whether you want to believe in God or not, at least understand the implications of not believing in God, because you don't get to just simply claim, well, no, there's still morality, and this morality is just as good. In fact, I think it's better. It's like, no, this is subjective. This is objective.
Over
Your
this because
worldview
he's
does
just
not allow for
reiterating this,
objective
and I have the
morality.
same
And honest
point of,
atheists
like,
will admit
morality
this.
literally means that it's subjective. You can, in fact, think that it is better.
Here, wait. I'm just skipping over the morality shit because, like, I only have the same response of, like, why is that bad, though? Just because you don't like it doesn't make it untrue. So I'm just skipping past that part.
All start crumbling down around you. I say this because your analogy with the car, in some ways, explains so many topics that we've discussed on this podcast.
Here, wait.
What he
What's
doesn't
the analogy with the car? Let's go back a little bit.
Example, you like it, right? Or you don't find it.
It's absurd. They're just not.
Morality, and this morality is just as good. In fact, I think it's better. We'll admit.
It's a huge problem because if you're just saying that society will stumble upon what is good and inevitably just get there on their own, that is to deny that people have ultimately a sinful nature. People,
yeah,
there's
it is.
something
I
dark
don't think sin
within
exists.
people,
So
because without God there is no light. And so this idea that we could stumble upon what is
they
more
know better than the sinful nature.
I mean, she's saying, like, oh, well, you're denying that people have a sinful nature if you believed in subjective morality, which is like, yeah, I do disagree with that because I don't think sin exists.
Okay. If we're using sin in the way that they say that sin is, which is basically an affront against, moral actions, yeah, there are things that happen that are against our morality that we don't like. Same thing happens to y'all?
Yeah, like, you're not special. You still do it, too.
moral all on our own, and get there on our own it's absurd.
Well, so let's look at it. So the first question.
She basically just goes. She just said, well, that's absurd. Like, why is it absurd? You're not explaining why it's absurd. You're just proposing that it's absurd and then going off of that everyone's going to agree with you on that basis. Like,
because the podcast she's on, yeah, everybody will agree with her.
But I mean, this video is literally, like, targeted at atheists. It's called Is Christianity Reasonable? Like,
no, it's targeted at Christians.
Well, yeah, but it's targeted at Christians who send it to me in my comments to say, look at this proves you wrong. Like, it's the kind of thing that you're supposed to send to an atheist. Like,
yeah, but
otherwise, is it reasonable to believe in God?
It is, but it's like if they're trying to
guy,
appeal to Christians or to atheists, which they seemingly are.
To reference H-Bomber Guy, H-Bomber Guy is like, he talked about InfoWars and how InfoWars isn't really like creating anything new or anything groundbreaking or, really covering anything with hard evidence, and all of their claims are easily refuted. But that's because their target audience
already agrees with them.
Yeah, well, it seems like they're trying to go after the quote-unquote enemy. Really, they're just trying to make money off of their target audience, because why would they? I'm sure that there's a plug.
I mean, a Christian
product.
Yeah, there is. I skipped it at the beginning.
There you go.
For fucking farmersonly.com, actually.
Oh
I think that's what it's for. Let me double check. Oh, no, it's for Good Ranchers. I don't know what that is. I thought it was farmersonly.com. I guess that was just the nostalgia. I don't know what Good Ranchers is. I didn't watch the ad. But I mean, like, the fact that a Christian sent this to me, though, to be
I
like,
want
this
to
will
see-
change your
please,
mind.
I need to see if they're selling supplements.
No, because I'll lose my spot.
Fair.
And also, I don't want to play their ad on my stream.
I will open the video on my end.
You don't have to be lonely at farmersonly.com. Sorry. Sorry. Oh, okay.
Nick Freitas.
And we kind of offered two examples. One was, again, anybody that claims that there's no evidence, again, for the
He's
God of the
selling
Bible,
mugs.
is apparently not aware of the Bible or not aware of evidence. Again, it's one thing to
The
say...
Bible is not evidence for the Bible. He literally just said anyone who's not aware of evidence for the Bible is not aware of the Bible. The Bible's not evidence for the Bible. Are you fucking stupid?
don't find the evidence convincing. It's not the same to say it doesn't exist because you don't like it.
It literally
or you
does
don't
not
find
exist.
convincing.
It is
the other
not
part
a-
of this is
there
about
is no
understanding
evidence.
the implications of what happens when you remove God from the equation. And I think that's something that isn't properly understood sometimes when we have this debate. People have this idea that the example I use a lot is when they say, well, again, I don't believe in God, and yet I act morally. I'm like, well, I don't know how, I can't tell you the intricacies of how an internal combustion engine works, but I can drive a car just fine. But if I,
What?
The guy in the imitation military shirt, Nick Freitas, he sells a $25 mug and a $25 t-shirt that
Oh my
both
God.
have the "Don't Tread on Me" stake, but the text says "Tread around and find out."
That's so
And
stupid.
then in his link tree, he also has "Why Dads Should Be Dangerous," "3 Things I Learned Raising Daughters."
Oh.
Yeah.
I believe in God, and it's Piss Dog. Piss Dog is God. I agree with you.
I come to the conclusion that there's no such thing as an internal combustion engine because I know how to drive a car, right? I'm going to find out when the engine stops working that wasn't true.
We can observe combustion engines, and some people do know how they work just because you don't.
The woman, his wife.
Ew. Like, we can look at a combustion engine, and someone does know how it works. No one has any evidence or proof that God exists. No one actually has any good justification for why God exists. That is not the same thing as you not understanding how an engine works but still being able to drive a car, because we can observe that engines exist.
You just created an analogy that explains the world that we're currently living in, the post-Christian West that we're increasingly living in. Like, the analogy that I have is if you go on Twitter, sorry, X, if you go on X and you look at like
Ew.
Richard Dawkins' feed, you see some interesting stuff. Because recently, and when I say recently, I really mean over the past couple of years or so, he's come out as a big critic of postmodernism, wokeism, modern day progressivism.
Yeah, I don't like that
I mean,
about
he-
him.
He's tweeted things like,
that made
look,
me
as a
like
biologist,
Richard
there's
Dawkins
very few
less.
things that exist within nature that are binaries. Sex is one of them. And he's criticizing the woke idea that, again, like, gender is fluid and that there's,
Okay,
you know,
let's
a
not
spectrum
even.
and
Let's
that-
not even,
that's
because
not
I don't
right.
like what Richard Dawkins says about that either.
What
because
he's
it's
doing
all
is
just
that
bullshit.
he's saying, I want the benefits of the society that we previously lived in that produced all of these things. But I don't want to give credit to the source or the author of all these things. Well, okay, when you tore the foundation of the house out from underneath it, why on earth are you surprised when the walls start crumbling down around you? I say this because your analogy with the car in some ways explains so many topics that we've discussed on this podcast that are related
No, it doesn't, because we can observe that combustion engine exists and someone made it and someone knows how it works. That is not applicable to God.
to culture or politics or society at large. Because there's a lot of people out there that don't seem to understand, well, why do we live in this age of nihilism and disillusion, and why is there rampant mental illness and narcissism
Capitalism.
and personality disorders and just clown.
Capitalism.
Why is everybody losing their minds?
Capitalism.
It's because we live in a
Capitalism.
post-Christian
Okay,
West.
let
That's the
him-
reason why.
let him
Everybody's
speak.
you're gonna worship something, right? And if you tear out the thing that held the bonds that held society together, and it was the Christian church for over 1,000 years, arguably for
No, it wasn't. There's other religions, dude, and also there have been secular societies for all of history.
2,000 years in the West. If you tear that away, guess what? The atheists out there who say that we're all just going to become a bunch of enlightened beings once you throw out this mumbo-jumbo book from the Bronze Age, they were wrong. They were dead wrong. Because people
No, the vast majority of scientists are actually atheists. The reason that you have a microphone and a headset and a computer and a YouTube channel is because the vast majority of people in STEM fields are atheists. Chances are the vast majority of people who contributed to that technology existing did not agree with you. So if you want to say that, then you should take off your headphones, turn off your computer, and go sit in a forest somewhere.
did not become enlightened.
And stop taking modern medicine. Also, stop wearing modern fabrics. Basically, stop engaging with any kind of modern scientific advancement. If you think that Christians made everything good, basically.
You know what they did? They became barbarians when you threw this out. This is how you get things like these pseudo-cults emerging. Wokeism is a religion. It's a
Oh my god.
replacement to Christianity. As I've said before, it's a religion without a Christ figure, with no redemption arc. But it's
These people, like, don't actually know what... Like, that's just a made-up word. It doesn't mean anything. Like, it's just... People further left than me that I don't like is what wokeism means. It's just people further left than me that I don't like.
It's trying to keep the vestiges of Christianity with its own morality system, with its oppressor versus oppressed dynamics, but it provides you for no
How much
redemption. It
time
provides
is
you
left on the
for
video?
for for
They're
no
about
meaning or
halfway through
purpose,
it.
no hope. And so what we've seen is not a return to rationality. What you've seen is an abandonment of rationality, an abandonment of science.
Again, the vast majority of modern scientists are atheists. I believe 33% of scientists are religious. So, no. Just no. You're wrong.
Turning
You're just
inward
wrong. Sorry.
And more worshiping self. I think that the anything and everything you see right now, whether it's any type of advertisement, it's all about.
You have an
whatever
advertisement in
you
your
have.
video,
You know, your
dumbass.
own- everything is self-focused, and what's interesting is, and I think Jordan Peterson talks about this sometimes. Is,
You, Jordan Peterson.
The more we look at ourselves, the more we mess ourselves up because we're so obsessed with that, and we've got our eyes on ourselves.
Well,
And
there's Theodore Dalrymple, who's again the pen name for I think it's Dr. Anthony Daniels. He talks about this as well when he was, and he's an atheist, right, or he's at least an agnostic. And
Can I request a favor?
Depends. What is it?
Can I, when the next time we go to Fancy Tiger Crafts, can I wear the arm sleeves? Because I kind of just
Yeah.
want to flex them, you know,
Yes.
as a crafty.
Okay, I'm honestly gonna skip this because this is all just you woke people. Oh no, people want people to have human rights, and I really don't have any interest in discussing that. To be completely honest, it's stupid. So
People wanting people to have human rights should be evidence of secular morality, and yet
yeah,
they think that it is the opposite because they don't agree with those human rights.
yeah, I'm just skipping past that because I have no interest in discussing that. That's honestly just blatantly retarded. Sorry.
talking about before, where it's what are the earliest copies that you have that were written or produced at the time that the events were actually taking place. And obviously, when you're talking about antiquity, it's easy for it's
The Bible was written 30 to 100 years after Jesus' death. I reiterate.
not like they were storing it all in an external hard drive somewhere, right? Like you had times where you had the Great
Yeah,
Library
the
of
New
Alexandria that burns down, and we lose all kinds of information about antiquity. So I want to read a little bit here just to provide some comparison. So the accuracy of today's Old Testament was confirmed in 1947 when archaeologists found the Dead Sea Scrolls. Along with today's West Bank and Israel, the Dead Sea Scrolls contained Old Testament scriptures dating 1,000 years older than any manuscripts
Old Testament keyword.
we had. When comparing the manuscripts at hand with these from 1,000 years earlier, we find agreement 99.5% of the time, and the 0.5% differences are minor spelling variances and sentence structure that doesn't change the meaning
Who cares? That doesn't make any of it true.
What is this
of the
argument
sentence.
for?
So here's what this means.
The fact that the Bible is
If you were reading
accurate,
the
I
Old
guess.
Testament
I don't
Bible,
know.
if you're reading the Old Testament,
which makes it the moral.
before the Dead Sea Scrolls, the earliest attestation that we had for some of these documents were 1,000 years after the fact. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, how accurate can this possibly be?
So we have
Right? And then all of a sudden we find something that dates back to 1,000 years earlier. Because again, when we're talking about the Old Testament,
Is
what we're
Greek
talking about
mythology real
sources
then?
that
'Cause
we're
it's
talking
older.
about events taking place within the Bronze Age, right? This is
Is Greek mythology.
1500
This argument
BC.
that it's old, therefore it's
in that-
true
in
is
that time.
bullshit.
Yeah, in that generalized time frame, right? So
Yeah.
we're old
There's
stuff,
older
and then
religions
all of a
in
sudden we find
Christianity.
documents, and we compare the documents that were written, 1,000 years earlier, and with ours, and all of a sudden we find 95.5% accuracy.
Yeah, because people generally the way that books were written before the printing press was that an individual person looked at the book and copied it by hand. So, yes, the person who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, there were probably other versions of the Bible and biblical texts. Someone else looked at those and also wrote them down in the original language that they were written in. Congrats. That's how books work. You discovered books. Good job.
Between the texts, with the 0.5% representing minor spelling that doesn't change the subject of the text. That is the best early attestation that we have, I think, of any book in antiquity. Now, what's interesting is regarding the New Testament.
What about what's it called, like the Iliad or whatever? Because the Iliad is that's like the most commonly printed book from like ancient Greece. So no, what about the Iliad?
Testament. It is
I
humanity's
think
most
that's what it's
reliable
called. I
ancient
don't
document.
remember.
All ancient manuscripts were written on papyrus, which didn't have much of a shelf life, so people hand-copied originals to maintain the message and circulate it to others. So to give you
Yeah,
an idea,
good. Congrats,
right?
you just
And this is
discovered
now we're talking about
books.
New Testament. So we've already established that.
FNAF is real.
Oh my god. He's talking about this like this is like unique to the Bible, as though like every popular book from antiquity does not have the same kind of consistency. And like what you discovered what a book is. Congratulations.
When we look at books in antiquity, the Old Testament through the Dead Sea Scrolls and whatnot has a great deal of early attestation and a great deal of consistency between
Why
what
does
was
that make
originally
it
written
true?
and what we have right now. So when we look at the New Testament, though, what do we say there? All right, so this is where we go into the other contemporary works. I got some data here. Few people doubt Plato's writing of the Republic. It's a classic written by Plato around 380 BC. The earliest
And?
copies we have of it are dated 900 AD, which is a 1,300-year time lag from when he wrote it. There are only 7 copies in existence from that time period, right? Caesar's Gallic Wars were written about 100 to 44 BC.
Because these were not as common books to have. The way that books basically the way to get a book in antiquity was that you knew someone who had a copy of that book, and you also knew someone who was willing to create a handwritten copy of that book for you. So basically the popularity of a book determined how many copies of that book there were. The Bible was a very popular book. Like
Bible had a fandom.
yeah, the
It
Bible was
you-
very
one
popular.
One could say it was a cult classic.
Oh my god. Yeah, like of course there's more copies of the Bible than like a random thing from Caesar, right?
But
because
does the Bible have
because people
Freddy
fucking read the
Fazbear?
Bible more.
But does the Bible have
Oh my
Freddy
god,
Fazbear?
I'm glad the Bible doesn't have Freddy Fazbear. I'm sorry, I'm a FNAF hater.
Or.
Ugh, okay.
The copies we have today are dated 1,000 years after he wrote it. We have 10 copies. When it comes to the New Testament, written between 50 and 100 AD, there are more than 5,000.
See, there he acknowledges, written between 50 and 100 AD. Earlier, he said it was an eyewitness account. So which is it? Is it an eyewitness account, or was it written 50 to 100 AD?
Copies. All are within 50 to 225 years of the original writing. Further, when it came to scripture, scribes, monks were meticulous in their copying of original manuscripts. They checked and rechecked their work to make sure it perfectly matched. What the New Testament writers originally wrote is preserved better than any other ancient
what's
manuscript. We can be more certain of that than what we read about Jesus' life and words, and we are certain of the writings of Caesar, Plato, Aristotle, and Homer. And they actually provide a series of books here with the Iliad, Herodotus,
Yeah, okay,
Thucydides,
the Iliad.
Thucydides, I always screw that up. Plato, Demosthenes.
Demosthenes.
You know what's interesting to me? The large variations in the different types of Christianity that there are, to the point where, I mean, even Catholicism could be considered like a type of Christianity. But the large variation, and then they want to claim that they have objective morality, when the consistent thing across atheists is that they all don't believe in God, and therefore, fuck off, go do your own thing.
Christians don't even agree with each other.
Yeah, Christians don't agree with each other.
Christians within the same denomination disagree with each other. The Methodist Church recently has been having a split based on how they feel about gay people. Like
there was a whole schism because one guy wanted other people to actually be able to read the book.
Yeah.
Demosthenes, Tacitus, Pliny. So there's
some more. Arian.
Let's give a couple examples here, right? So Caesar's The Gallic Wars, originally written between.
How does this
144
prove
BC.
that the Bible is
that's
true?
when
It's
he
just
lived.
saying it's
sorry,
consistently
144.
documented.
Well, they're talking about the earliest manuscripts written, right? So this is the earliest copy we have is 900 years after the fact. The time gap between when it would have been originally written and the earliest manuscript we have is 1,000 years.
Okay, this
and the
is
number
stupid.
of manuscripts that we have
this
that
is
are
a long
1,000
video.
years
I'm going past.
after the fact.
This is not an
10.
argument for anything about the truth of the Bible. He's just saying it's like this is just not relevant at all. Like, congrats, the Bible was consistently documented. It was a popular book. I'm just going past this whole section because this really is
huge. Kind of problematic though.
Yeah. I'm kind of done with this. I'm gonna be honest. He's irritating me.
You are irritating me at the moment.
It's not a furry. It's an emo cat. You are irritating me at the moment. Okay, I'm probably gonna nuke the stream because I'm getting tired of this. It's irritating me, and he has not made a single argument, and I've already watched, how long is the stream? It's an hour and a half, so we're gonna be done for now because this is getting on my nerves. So thank you guys for watching. Have a good rest of your day.